Is that one of your clues? It's nice. You can put it away now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I'm SocioPsycho, and this is Mob Reviews, and today we'll be looking at Detective Grimoire. This is created by SFB Games, and it is a point-and-click detective crime-style game with a comedic sidebar to it. How well does it manage to pull off what it is intended? And that's what we'll dive into here today. And we'll begin in the options menu. Now, when we jump into the options menu, you do have a variety of sound sliders for your music and sound effects, which is definitely appreciated. Having to adjust to the individual is always nice, so having that availability. Screen resolutions are not really available, as the game has been running at 1920 by 1080 for me at 30 to 40 frames per second. There has been no clipping, but in between some of the transitional pages there has been some tearing, and I have suffered one crash. Performance-wise, overall, I don't feel the game is really imbalanced. It's not something that's going to explode on your computer, but it does have a little blip in the system could go wrong here and there. The game does have an autosave feature, which, as far as I can tell, goes off of zone by zone, not chapter or anything like that. It's not based off of progression, but more about your movement in between the different zones. So the amount of safeguard it has against progression loss is pretty high. So even though I've suffered a crash, it wasn't debilitating, I got right back in there, was only slightly immersion breaking, but beyond that, no problems. Performance-wise, like I said, a few minor things, but nothing that has been debilitating to the game at all. Now you also have sidebar info, which is when you turn it on or off, you can see it cleans up the interface a lot better. What we also have available is sparkly hint icon and window mode. Sparkly hint icon is sort of a visual tip, so when you go into a zone it says, hey, I see a clue. It's meant to help progress people who are having a hard problem, but I never really found the game to be focused or developed in a way that it puts up walls in front of you just to be a pain in the ass. It flows rather well, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, when it comes to point and click games, interface is important. And when we look at the base level interface that this game has, it can be pretty confusing at first because there's a lot on the screen that's going on. We'll start on the left side, and on the left side you have your progression through the game on the top, the challenges that you've completed, the profiles, the clues, and notes. Now, the profiles are profiles to everybody that you have availability to meet in this world and interview in order to decipher who is in the wrong, who is responsible for the crime, the murder that you are here to solve. When we click on one of these, as you can see, as it has the challenge solved because you talk to them and you figure out more information and you can put together more aspects of a personality and get further information. A profile is pretty much just that, and the more that you accomplish and complete and put together and tie together, the more of these that you can unlock until you know everything there is about that person in regards to a situation. Now, you also have in this, though it's not something you need to do, is suspicion versus not suspicion activities. It's an achievement, but it doesn't really play into the game mechanics at all, so you don't need to worry about that. If you're wondering what are these bars that look so imposing upon all the characters' names, it's really nothing you need to worry about. If you don't want to actually involve yourself in an extra timescape to do that, you don't need to, so keep that out of your mind, no worries there. We move on and we go to the clues. Now, these clues are all the items that you pick up throughout the detective experience that you can interact with people in regards to gathering more information, understanding what's happening within the game. And when we click on some of these clues, you can see it makes up these different parts. And while you talk to more people, these different bulletin points unlock. So you're not going to know everything there is to know about these different items just by picking up the item itself. You have to investigate and show it to other people and talk and try to see, okay, well, who's going to know something about this item and who's not going to know something about it? And this is where you can find that information. And lastly, we have the notes. Notes just regard to the locations on the map, which you may have information about. So if you want to try to remember something of a location, maybe you come back from playing later, you went to bed, or whatever the case is, you want to refresh something, then you can go through these different zones and you can see all the different clues or notes that you've acquired through these different investigations. Now, when we move the little fella buddy on the bottom, you click him to move, and then it brings you up to a new spot. You can't just accidentally click out of a map. And it was a little abrupt at first, but I actually like having to click on the little guy first and then move down, because it ensures that you do not accidentally move out of a zone instead of just right-clicking. Because there's no toggle bar as to what items you can click, as in your standard point-and-click adventure. There's no press tab and see 12 items on the map. As you can see, when I hover over anything, there's nothing that is really there. It's sort of a click on the map and see what is or what he has to say about it. But if you don't like doing that, you also have quick travel, which I ended up transferring to more over, and you can easily just transfer that way, either direction for the individual. And on the right side, this is just a small visualization of your progression, as you can see the 8s to how much information you have on the individual people. So the interface is actually pretty clean and sleek for a styling of this game, and I have no issues with that whatsoever. So interaction within the adventure, because this is a point-and-click adventure, the interaction within it comes down in a standard point-and-click, you would think, using the items in a combinational force into or with the items or environment in the world. That's not really the case here, and I'm so glad that it is, because this game is a detective game, not a mechanic game or some variation. You're doing a few puzzles here and there, but they're very simplistic. The few puzzles that they do have do not degrade the value of respect they have on the player, but they are pretty simplistic. And they're short. They're small, they're short, they don't overstay their welcome, and there's very few of them. So even though they are simplistic, it doesn't berate you with a bunch of dumb little childish games and say, haha, don't think you can't handle these, or maybe this is the best your skill can handle. It doesn't scale into that area. It pulls it back into more a detect, find the clues, bring these clues to other people, see the personalities, build personas and profiles up on people, and use an actual detective element that's rooted at the core. While you gather up the clues that you have, you're not combining these items that you acquire to create some sort of new item to get you past a part in the story. As I said, the clues that you acquire, the items that you acquire, are items that you use in order to understand or find out who the murderer is. What is the situation? How do these tie together? The most that you have when it comes to combining items together is a small mini game, which is just finding or sampling out some forensic goo on some of these items. But you're not really combining more than just using chemistry to find out what this goo is, and it's a very simplistic little mini game, not difficult at all. Because it has this element, it also doesn't tie into a scavenger quest. You're not running around the map trying to find that one key to that door, or finding the seashell, which will for some reason allow you to build a 12-volt engine. Everything makes sense. The reasons and locations where you find them, how people talk, they all give subtle clues into the personalities and capabilities. Which leads us into the core of the gameplay. While the gameplay is a simplistic point-and-click 2D map-to-map locational switch, it's the conversations and personas in between the different characters that can make you have some suspicions as the player. It wraps the player up and it says, investigate, and actually feel like a detective. I've played a lot of games that have attempted to be detective games, some ranging from multi-million-dollar budgets and others being very indie like this one. But this game is one of the few that actually does detective right. While this is a more simplistic version, it's not a very hard rule set. You're not going to try to find out the Illuminati and have a 10-12 hour plus adventure of confusion and complication. It's pretty straightforward, and you will play about maybe 2 to 4 hours depending on your speed and whatnot. but the game fits together in a synergy. The mechanics of the items that you find, in between how you react or identify these items with who they belong to, or how people have used them, or the personas of these people are, all fits together very well. Which leads us to the story. Now the story is pretty simplistic. You are a detective, you come to this island, which is a swamp with a small tourist destination. There has been a murder, and it's your job to find out who is responsible for this murder. And while doing so, you talk to these different individuals who work at this park, and you get a sense of what's going on. Now the game does wrap itself as a comedy, and while there are a few elements of tee-hee, that's funny, it's nothing like, oh my god, my gut's gonna burst and I'm gonna pee myself because I'm laughing so hard. It has a bunch of cute little areas, maybe one or two, well that's kinda creepy, but overall it has a very relaxed, smooth, and energetically welcoming environment. It's a calm, cute game with a slightly serious tone. It doesn't take itself oh so serious due to its art style, but it does it just enough to where you're not feeling dismayed by the environment in order to progress in the seriousness of your adventure. You are a detective here to solve a crime first and foremost. Just because it has a few silly adventures and elements which offsets any serious gravity to a more relaxed situation doesn't mean that your job is any less diminished. One other element which really adds to its story is the animation of the characters that really tie in well with each other. They have this sort of persona that helps express the emotional gravity of a situation that is being related to the player. On top of which the voice acting is done in a very professional manner, upon which I will let you hear for yourself right now.
Aha! The great detective returns. Did you run out of ideas? Need a little push in the right direction?
You're the one who needs a little push.
Like it or not, I'm here to help you.
I get it. You give me a map, then you magically disappear and hide behind a tree for an hour. You want me to be impressed?
Did you talk to all the suspects yet?
I'm working on it. You can't rush these things, you know.
Have you noticed anything unusual?
I notice that this is going to take longer than I originally planned, and I'm getting the feeling that I wasn't wrong about this tourist attraction.
What do you mean?
I had a hard time believing there could be a place like this here in a dark corner of a swamp. It didn't make sense, and it still doesn't.
Some things don't make sense straight away. You need to look a little closer.
At what? The mud? The water? The trees?
Nope. They've been here for years, and they're not to blame. They belong here.
She's gone again. Hiding in a bush, no doubt. I wonder if she'll ever tell me something I can actually understand. Sorry to interrupt. I can see that you're, hard at work.
You weren't here yesterday.
Did you miss me?
You're the detective, right?
I'm a detective.
So, that was your head I saw blowing through here.
You spotted it too.
If you're good at your job, you may have realized that it's kinda dead around here. So, I generally notice magical floating detective hats. Oh, and don't worry, you look better without it.
How do you know?
Oh, I have a good imagination.
So at the end of the day, I actually found this to be quite a good little game. A solid story with some few comedic quirks, solid gameplay, and a detective game which actually fits together well. There's not too many of those, and while it is a shorter experience, while it does have a few minor problems in its performance, though they're not overly debilitating, the game wraps up a pretty enjoyable experience where you don't need to divulge a huge level or portion of your brain power or concentration to do it. Yes, you still need to understand what's going on, you still need to listen, but it plays as a detective game where you listen to the individuals in the world, you piece those facts of what they say, the informations that they give you together to understand the personas and understand who has been where and how these things all tie together, and it sums it up all pretty well at the end of the game. It has excellent music that arcs throughout the entirety of the game, which helps really express the emotional weight of the story, even though it's not something that's really going to draw you in and make you sob and cry and give you all teary eyes or give you goosebumps to make you feel like, oh wow, that changed my life. It's a simplistic game that could best be resembled as light reading rather than something heavy and in-depth. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is an easy recommend as I greatly enjoyed my time in it and I was pleasantly surprised with the environment that I found myself in. It's refreshing to have a game that is of this quality but doesn't always have to be so serious or overly involved in trying to grab and sparkle with some pizzazz. It's a simplistic game and it knows that and enjoys being that, and because it's confident with that and everything works together with that, it welcomes you in, and it's an enjoyable experience. An easy recommend. I have been SocioPsycho, I thank you for watching, I hope this has been a help to you, and I'll see you next time.